My name is Francis Dubois. I'm the coordinator of the Cocktail Français. I'm delighted to see you this evening for the first event in 2013. According to French tradition, we still have until the 31st, which is tomorrow, which is actually today in Paris already, to wish Happy New Year. So I wish all of you, I wish all the members of the National Arts Club a happy and healthy New Year, full of joy and happiness. And please greet all your neighbors, turn around and greet your neighbors. It's like a church, you see, at the end. And you wish Happy New Year to all. And 2013, which I understand is the year of the snake in the Chinese calendar, which starts Friday, will be a wonderful year. 2013, we decided to invite authors, prominent authors living in Europe, living in America. And we're very, very happy to have this evening Pierre DELERIVE, who has accepted to be the first one, Rencontre avec Pierre DELERIVE, who is this Franco-American author. And we are very, very grateful for him to accept to be with us tonight. Please welcome Pierre DELERIVE. This doesn't look like a debate, a political debate in Republican, Democrat, and so forth. We are the National Arts Club. We are not doing any politics. So, Pierre DELERIVE, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you
I
for having
know
me.
you hated to be here, and you didn't want to be. You said, my wife is my press officer and is the wonderful socialite. We'll speak later on this. But I am very shy, and I just write. Pierre DELERIVE, who are you?
Okay, well, I was born like Charles de Gaulle.
It starts well.
I was born in Lille, south of the Belgian border, but my parents moved to Paris when I was very little, and that's where I grew up and went to school and business school. And as soon as I graduated, the army called because the Algerian war was going on. So I spent 2.5 years in the army, and then when I came back, started a career in international marketing. I think that took me to Hamburg, Germany for 2 years, Brussels, London, and finally New York, and here I am.
We are very happy to have him in here. New York being in the center of the world after Hamburg, which is another wonderful city. That's another topic of another lecture. We greet a very dignified representative of Hamburg. Why did you leave the business world?
Well, I was actually pretty happy with my business career, but I think I always was a writer. Even as a kid, I wrote many chapter ones, and then of course my friends would call for a soccer game and there would never be a chapter 2. But it was in my blood, and as I grew up and matured, it just took up more and more space in my life, and I became much more, I realized it was really becoming a bigger and bigger part of me. And one day, it's a day I'll never forget, I was on the number 6 train. I was working in New York, number 6 train, and I realized I had what I think is called an epiphany. I realized that I didn't want to grow older and eventually reach the end of my life, and say to myself, maybe if I had tried really hard, I could have been a decent writer. And that very day, I resigned. I gave back the company car, forgot about the expense account. My taste in restaurant changed. And I discovered a very interesting part of on airplanes. At the back, there's a section they call economy. And I still don't like it.
So this is the day where you really became a writer?
Mm-hmm. What happened is that, as I said, you know, this urge I felt in myself to write became stronger and stronger. So I started to write even as I was following my business career, pursuing my business career. I started to write in airports, on planes, in hotel rooms, and yes, in meetings. And one day I finished my first novel.
But tell us that I understand that you met some very important writers in Paris.
Well, that's a story I love, really.
And since this is the Cocktail
and
France,
it's not about me, it's about someone else, amazing generosity. I had finished this first novel, which was called L'Entre-deux-Vies, meaning between two lives, which I think, of course, now I see it, it foreshadowed what the choice I would make later in my life. But at the time, it was just a story of somebody who desperately wanted to change his life. And I finished the manuscript and I gave it to my father, who was not exactly unbiased. And he said, "Oh, I love this novel. And I have an idea," he said. I happen to know Maurice Schumann.
I don't know if you know Maurice Schumann. Maurice Schumann was an extraordinary French of the 20th century. He was the voice of the Free French of de Gaulle in London. Became Minister of Foreign Affairs in the Georges Pompidou government, member of the French Academy, a writer, a magnificent person who was, as an academician, was an immortel. So close to God, underneath you have Maurice Schumann.
Yeah, it's true. When it comes to cultural status in France, you cannot do better than being one of the 40 immortals. The Académie Française, there's nothing better than that. So my father said, I happen to know Maurice Schumann. And you know Georges Conchon.
Georges Conchon is a very wonderful writer. I happen to have met many years ago, most of you were not born, in my very first job with the United Nations in Africa. And he came, La Victoire en Chantant, which is the black and white in color, which was a movie made in Côte d'Ivoire, in Ivory Coast, in the mid-70s. And Georges Conchon won the Hollywood Award for the best foreign movie, and a magnificent person also. So what happened to Georges Conchon?
Well, Georges Conchon was also the winner of the Prix Goncourt, which is the highest literary award in France. He was a best-selling author. Novel after novel, it sold. And also a very successful screenwriter with movies with Gérard Depardieu, Romy Schneider. It was really a big deal. So my father says, I happen to know Maurice Schumann. You know Georges Conchon? I said, hey, I've met him once. I cannot say I know him. He said, no matter, said my father. We're going to have lunch. I'm going to invite them. We're going to send them your manuscript. And then I'm going to invite them for lunch at the Cercle Interallié, famous Claire Interallié, of which I happen to be a member. Sounded good. So I arrive first, of course, and my father walks into the dining room with Maurice Schumann, and of course all heads turn. My God, Maurice Schumann. And the great man takes my hands and he says, young man, so talented. Oh, what a novel. It's incredible. Frankly, words fail me. So my father was beaming, of course. Then Georges Conchon comes in. He had also read the manuscript, but didn't talk much about it. And over lunch, they talk a lot about de Gaulle and the time in London, things like that. And my father asked for the check. He had never been happier to sign for a check. And he was beaming. And before leaving, Schumann again, the great man takes my hands again. He said, young man, remember, so talented. Okay. And then I turned to Georges Conchon and I said, I have my car outside, can I drive you back home? And he said, sure. And he sits down in my car and the first thing he says is, whew, what an ass. I say, excuse me? He says, Schumann, what an ass. Let's face it, my friend, you can't write. So it took me a few minutes to recover. And then
did you drop him there, or did you offer him a ride? You're very generous.
And then he added, and that's what I love, but I think we can do something about it. And he proceeded, this man who owed me nothing, who hardly knew me, he certainly didn't need me, believe me. This man invited me several weekends to his country house, where, which he had bought with his royalties, obviously. And in the morning, we would go to his office, and he would take my manuscript apart, and it would go like, you know, if your readers are not totally stupid, they've understood that a long time ago. So take it out. Okay. Oh, this is a cliche. You don't want cliche. Take it out. Or, aha, this is a pretty good paragraph. I like it. So instead of burying it in the center of the chapter, bring it up. And so on and so forth. So Georges Conchon, who again owed me nothing, taught me that there was a lot more about writing a novel than writing a story. He taught me that it was a craft, that it was hard work. And actually, when I finished rewriting the novel after a couple of months, he took it himself to his publisher, who didn't take it. But okay, I can live with that. I did live with that. But Georges Conchon passed away several years ago, but I will be forever grateful. I think that this is the most amazing act of generosity.
Thank you very much. I think it's very important for all of us to be generous, especially to the young people, to the young generation, especially in the art and the art field. So the first novel was Simple Soldat.
Yeah.
What story was it about?
Well, I had just given up my career, and what I needed badly, apart from income, was a story. And I'll never forget that day either. I was lying in bed one morning in Brooklyn Heights, where I lived then, looking for a story, and for some reason, I have no explanation there, for some reason the memory of a young man I had met in the army visited me. We were in basic training in France, and this man was retarded, severely retarded. He should never have been there, it was clear. And they were all waiting for his discharge papers. And soon he would be sent back home. We knew that. But several months later, having completed my training, I was shipped to Algeria. And when I arrived somewhere in Bir El Ater on the Tunisian border, there he was. The retarded man was still there. The papers had never arrived. He had fallen between the cracks. What happened to him, honestly, I don't know. I think I remember he was in charge of feeding the pigs. But the memory of this man, around this little man whom I remembered, a story started to form itself. The story of a soldier by accident who dies a hero by accident. And I rushed downstairs where my then wife was having breakfast, and I said, I think I have a story. Do you want to hear it? She said, sure. And I started, but I couldn't finish it. I broke down, I started crying, and I knew I had a story. And during the month that it took me to write the story, I cried and cried and cried. And I don't know why. Even now, as you know, we made a movie out of it, but I don't know how many times I've seen the movie, maybe 100 times, maybe. Even when I see it now, I choke. So there is something in that story of a guy who is despised by all his comrades and ends up winning their respect. I don't know. That's something that touches me a lot. Anyway, it became a novel called Simple Soldat, and then a movie.
And the movie was shown at the National Arts Club.
Well, what happened is that I had written a novel, and then at the time I was going to NYU attending a screenwriting course, and I had a wonderful teacher by the name of Michelle Cousin, and she said, you know, this is a movie. So I wrote the screenplay with her guidance, under her guidance, of course. And when it was finished, I gave it to a few friends around in New York, and they all said more or less the same thing. They said, you know, this is a great story, but first of all, the Algerian war, nobody knows about it here, and nobody cares. And number two, it is a French story. Why, I don't know. But they felt it was French. So I said, okay, so I rewrote it in French. But the problem was I didn't know anyone in the movie business. And one day I met a woman on vacation, and we're exchanging, ideas, and said, my brother is a producer in Paris, so next time you're there, give him a call. So I had the French screenplay under my arm. I arrived in Paris. I called this man and I said, I met your sister. She said you would be willing to. He said, okay, drop it off. So I dropped off the manuscript, and the following morning, he called me from his car and he said, I'm buying it. I said, why did I wait so long? It's so easy, So I met him at his office the very same day, and he said, where did the story come from? And I like it. And who do you see, the cast? Do you have any actors in mind? Okay, we started changing ideas. The sky was the limit. And as a director, I said, I'll do it. No, I said, excuse me, it doesn't work that way. Nobody, what have you done before? I said, nothing, but I cried so much writing the story that if somebody fucks it up, it will be me. And he gave in. He gave in, but of course he had been right earlier on, because nobody would put money on my name. So actually we made the movie with a budget of $800,000, which for a movie with a war background is nothing. And actually, the $800,000 were $2,000 that the screenplay had won. So in a way, I financed the movie. But we did it. It won a few awards, and it was the most exciting experience of my life.
Thank you very much. Congratulations for that. We are surrounded...
Just one word, just to remind you, to remember those of you who were here, the movie was shown here 5 or 6 years ago by the film committee.
We thank the film committee to have good taste. We are surrounded by naked women. So does that remind you of another book you wrote, Victor et les femmes?
Yeah.
So okay. I hope it doesn't give you bad ideas about the Cocktail Français.
Yeah.
But they will be removed tomorrow. Pierre, what is this story about Victor et les femmes?
Well,
Victor and the women.
Victor et les femmes basically wrote itself. I didn't have much to do with it, or I just typed it. I call it the cheapest therapy. It's the story of a teenager in Paris struggling with his exploding sexuality under his mother's regime of terror. And I could have spent hundreds or thousands of dollars on visiting a shrink. Instead, I wrote a novel, which made me some money. So in the end, it's a good deal. Just to give you an idea of the flavor of the novel, the first line reads, "When I think of my teens, I see naked women." So here they are.
I would like to speak about the latest book which was published, Te souviens-tu de moi? Do you remember me? Pierre, what is it about?
Well, the genesis of the story is that one day a friend of mine, who is an art dealer in France, and he visits New York twice a year for auction shows, he one day told me that his father had passed away. And he said, I found his diary, and my dad was in the French resistance, and his network, his underground network, was betrayed, sold to the Germans. And my father went to Buchenwald and other concentration camps, and eventually he survived and went home. But I think that's a great story. And I didn't see it. So for a couple of years, he kept bringing it up, and I frankly didn't see the story. Until one day, aha.
Is somebody calling you?
Until one day, I had an idea, and I said, would you be okay if I changed anything I want in the story? The names, the places, the dates, the circumstances? He said, yes, sure, go ahead. I said, because what I would like to write is the story from the point of view of the man who betrayed your father. He said, but you can't do that because we never knew who it was. I said, but that would be my problem as a writer. And that just taking this new perspective allowed me to dig into deeper problems, the sort of problem that really fascinate me more than just the action of going to the horrible life in the concentration camps and the survival. It allowed me to delve into issues of guilt. I created a sort of Sophie's choice kind of choice, where really he had to make a decision and there was no good choice. And so it's about guilt, it's about redemption, atonement, and that made it to me more interesting. So that's how I wrote the story.
I have enjoyed it very much, really. It's a wonderful book. I highly recommend it. It's in French. It has been translated as Do You Remember Me? And you can get it on Amazon. You have, I think, all the particulars here, Amazon and Barnes & Noble. I was particularly impressed by the details and of this horrible period of World War II in Buchenwald and so forth. How did that come about?
Well, you know, I had no first-hand knowledge of all that. But when you write a story on this subject, you cannot afford to just wing it, you know. You really have to study. So the first thing I did, I went to Buchenwald. I spent a few days there. Nothing much is left. The walls, the gate. The trees, for some reason I was fascinated by the trees, saying to myself, you know, they saw it all. And maybe they remember it. And then there's the museum, which was, most of it was destroyed by the Russians when they took over. But there's also a museum. And I also went to Weimar, which is, 15 miles away, where Goethe was born. And I saw the Elephant Hotel, where Hitler had spoken to the crowd. And I remember looking at the older people, in the street, saying, how could they have claimed that they didn't know? How about the wind blowing in that direction? Okay, how can you ignore? But anyway, you know, I didn't want to be judgmental. It's just that it was part of the exploration of the subject. And of course, I read a lot, and I used my friend's father's diary. So I'm pretty sure about all the facts. But yeah, when you deal with a subject like that, you really have to study.
How do you explain that such a country like Germany, a Christian country, could have done that?
I don't have the answer. I really don't. I think it's, you know, it's about human nature. It's about human nature. And you see what happens every single day in the world, whether it's the Muslim world or the Palestinian conflict or the hostage taking in Algeria, or just what happens in other fields. I mean, it doesn't have to be war. It's really human nature. I think that supersedes all the allegiances that you can have toward the church or toward the state. Human nature. I'm not a big fan of human nature. If I ever meet God, I will tell her.
Tell him.
Honestly, I mean, don't take it too personally, but I don't think you did a great job.
How did your friend react, the one who gave you his father's diary, when he read the book?
I'm sorry, I didn't understand the question.
How did your friend react when you published the book?
First of all, I never understood why he gave me the permission to change everything, but he did. And then when the book was published, and I think he was pretty proud of the reviews were sensational. So he bought quite a few and gave them to his friends and family. No, he was happy.
Okay, so this is Do You Remember Me? And again, you can, and I urge you to write to Amazon and to order it and to have it
also in ebooks.
And it's published in French by Buchet-Chastel, which is a very prominent intellectual publisher in the left bank.
And later on, I will read a short excerpt of the novel.
The next book is Bayou Cruel. What is that about?
Yeah, well, the genesis of the story is strange too. Ever since I arrived in New York 28 years ago, I'm afraid, I've been haunted by this question. How come, having been born in France, raised, educated in France, how come I knew the day I arrived here that I was home? It's kind of strange. And I haven't changed my mind, by the way, it is home. And also, another level, why am I so emotional when I read or hear about the plight of the black people during the civil rights years? Sure, slavery, but even more the Rosa Parks, the Selma, all those incidents. Why am I so emotional when I hear about that? So when you ask yourself these sort of questions, you come up with all sorts of answers, and one would be, what if I had been here before? What if I was here before as a black person? And whether I believe it or not is totally irrelevant. It's the beginning of a story. So the story of Bayou Cruel is the story of two men who die exactly at the same moment. One is a French restaurateur in Paris who dies in the fire of his restaurant. And the other one is an old black man who is murdered in Louisiana. And what happens is that they both die at the same time, but the French restaurateur, the white French restaurateur, is revived in the ambulance on his way to the hospital. And what happens, and what the reader has to believe, and apparently it's not a problem, the reader believes it, is that the wires up there have been crossed. And when he comes to, he's no longer the person he used to be. Sure, he looks the same, but he's now inhabited by the soul of the murdered black man. So from that point on, he will make choices, decisions would have been totally unthinkable before his accident. And all these decisions, all these chance encounters will lead him step by step to Louisiana, to the place where the old man was murdered. And then he has this sense of déjà vu. And he meets people he has never met before, but he reacts to them in a very, very violent fashion. And he starts asking questions that he is not supposed to ask.
Pierre, it's amazing that you have so many different subjects, from the Algerian War, from women, from naked women. What about Tiger Man? Tell us about Tiger Man.
Okay, this is many, many years ago. I was still in business. I was having lunch with the man in charge of the PR of my company. And he was telling me that he had started his career with Ringling Brothers in the PR department.
Ringling Brothers, that's the circus.
The circus, you know, Barnum, Bailey. And honestly, I forgot. It was so long ago, I forgot the details of the conversation. But he told me about the man he knew who was the MC of a traveling circus in Mexico. And, you know, I was looking for stories already. So I said, you know what, that's interesting. Could I meet this man? And a few weeks later, I took 2 days off from my job, flew down to Mexico, met the man in a seedy hotel in Mexico City.
You love that.
We rode a bus for several hours, and we arrived where the circus was. And I spent the day backstage. And I remember a lot of time with the man in charge of the big cats, the tigers. And the guy had only one arm, and he told me that it was part of the job. You know, when you feed the tigers, you know, things happen. And also, I'll never forget the dinner I had after the show in a local Mexican diner, and this man, the MC, and his girlfriend, who was a fairly large woman, whose job was to ride the elephants in the show, and they were both in their makeup, and I was then lost in Mexico. Said, life can be fun sometimes. And anyway, nothing happened. I just came back to New York with notes, but nothing happened. And only a few years ago, I found myself in Arizona on the Navajo reservation around Monument Valley, and I've been there many times, and I find the place fascinating. And for some reason, you know, I was looking at this landscape again, and I had all sort of ideas. And this memory of the tigers and the circus came back, and I had a story. So now I have this man who used to be married to a Navajo woman, and he used to be in the circus, And he has recycled himself as a trainer of big cats for the movie industry. And there's a conflict between the Las Vegas bad guys who want to start a casino on the reservation and the Navajos who, this is true by the way, and the Navajos who are not happy with the casinos because it's against their religious beliefs. So they have the guns, he has the tigers. That's the idea.
I'm just amazed that we went from Algeria to New York, to World War II, to Buchenwald, and now we're in the Navajo. How did you get all this?
I don't know. You know, what I hear from you is a kind of positive vibe. You almost seem to congratulate me. But there's something embarrassing about it. Because, you know, with an MBA in my pocket and a career in marketing, you would think that I spend some time thinking about market opportunities or segments of the readership. And it's just not like me. I can't do it. I see writers like, okay, Stephen King, John Grisham, John le Carré. They've carved a niche for themselves. They have a following. When you buy a novel by Stephen King, you know pretty much what kind of story you're going to read. And the reason you buy the novel is because you've read one before, and you probably read one another later. So I know that should be the way to go. I just can't do it. When I write, it doesn't come from here, it comes from here.
When we read Pierre DELERIVE, we know that we are looking forward to read the next novel.
Thank you very much.
And what is the next novel? About Les Malgré Nous, about something very dear to my heart, about Alsace, about the East Province of France. Tell us about Les Malgré Nous. What is it in English?
I think, Francis, we talked about it yesterday, so you're the one who is going to tell our friends what the Malgré Nous are.
No, I'm interviewing you.
Okay.
So, Les Malgré Nous, you know, World War II, 22nd of June 1940, France signs the armistice. Alsace and Moselle become part of the Third Reich, and all the young people become German soldiers and are immediately sent to the Russian front. And those are called Malgré Nous, against our will. And it has been a shame because, of course, after World War II, and they came back, many died on the Russian front, obviously, and in the camps. But when they came back, it was a shame because it was, you know, they were not on the right side of history, and it is a problem which we still have today. So what are you writing about this?
Well, what happened is that a friend of mine, actually the same guy who drove me to Buchenwald, his sister, who is now in her 90s, married a Malgré Nous, not in Strasbourg where you're from, but in Nancy. And he was telling me about his sister. I was familiar with the Malgré Nous, but I didn't know much. And it sounded interesting. I said, well, next time you go and visit your sister, I'd like to tag along. So, and Tony actually came with us. We went to Nancy, and we visited this woman, who, as I said, I'm not even sure she's still alive. And her husband, who was practically blind. But what really struck me, what made me believe I had a story, is that she opened a photo album. And then there was this picture of this young man, her husband, in a Nazi uniform. And she said to me, beaming, wasn't he gorgeous? And that's what made me think that I had a story, because this conflict of emotions. And actually, you told me a story which I love, the story of this accountant.
Which I will not tell you. So,
I'm going to use it.
Pierre, we are looking forward to your next book on this, and of course we'll invite you at the National Arts Club on this very important subject. And since we celebrated 2 days ago the 50th anniversary of the French-German Treaty, which was the Élysée Treaty, I think it's just wonderful that we have been living through this peace process ever since, thanks to some great politician. Pierre, how do you describe your creative process? How do you write?
Well, I think I was very much influenced by, I still am, very much influenced by the movies. And I find writing the easy part. The difficult part is to see the next scene. So what I try to do usually is to stay in bed a bit longer than I should and try and visualize the scene. I know where I am in my story, so now what are they doing? And what do they say? What will move the story forward? But it really in cinema terms. And once I see it, when I hear the door closing or the phone ringing or the screeches of the tires outside the house, when I hear the dialogue, then I'm ready to write. And that, frankly, is the easy part, because all I do really is like what I see and hear. But of course, what happens is that many times I'm just stuck. And this is the most depressing feeling in the world. What do I do now? I don't know. What do they do? I don't know. But eventually, they come to life.
You married an American lady who is here, Tony Silva DELERIVE, who happens also to be a member of the National Arts Club and a prominent painter. How does a writer live with a painter?
Well,
I want a true answer. Tony, don't listen.
Why not? I think it should be the other way around. How does an artist, a painter, live with a writer?
How does an artist live with a painter? I've been reminded.
no, I think the key is to respect each other. And I'm her #1 fan, and she's my #1 fan, I know that. Unfortunately, she doesn't read French, so it does not much help all the time. But
And you write most of your novels.
But you have to take my word for it. I say it's good, so she
You
say
have
fine.
translated.
And then, no, I think the main thing really is to respect each other, freedom, space. And Tony is a social butterfly. I'm a loner. So she goes out to the theater, she goes out to meet friends. She had 2,500 of them. I have 2 of them. But that's fine. And she paints at the back of the loft. I write at the other end of the loft. And it works well. It's wonderful.
Thank you very much. Pierre.
And by the way, she did that.
Yeah, we want to thank you for this poster.
Well, yeah, you did
cover.
all those things I wouldn't do. I wouldn't be able to do.
This is the cover of the book, Do You Remember Me? Which, as I said, is available on Amazon. Pierre, the last day of your life, what would be the sentence you want to write? This has not been prepared.
What about, will you remember me?
And what will you tell the Lord?
I beg your pardon?
What will you tell the Lord? What will you tell? This is the.
When he went up there, he would tell the.
Yeah, I will tell her, you know, you didn't do a great job. So, would it be okay if we concluded by reading?
Thank you very much. Thank you. Please read. So, this is a passage of Do You Remember Me?
It's an excerpt from Do You Remember Me, and it is a key part of the story. And as I told you, it's told by the narrator. His name is Louis Lenné, and he's in a resistance network with his best friend Bertrand, childhood best friend. And he has just been caught by the Germans. And the man who speaks now is the SS officer who interrogates him. And he says, "We were waiting for you in Rue de Lisbonne, Monsieur Lenné. Rather than arrest you, our men followed you to the Rue Amelot, where they realized that you had a, what do you call it, a romantic encounter, a rendezvous. They wisely decided to let you run. So now you'll have to share your secrets with me, Monsieur Lenné. Do you understand?" My mouth felt like sandpaper. "Yes, sir." "No, a Hauptmann. I'm a captain." "So who is this young lady?" The woman of my life, I screamed silently. The woman I love, I would give my life for her. Suzanne Marchand, I said. Your girlfriend? My fiancée. Aha! Herzlichen Glückwunsch, Monsieur Lenné. Congratulations. We don't want anything unpleasant to happen to her, do we? I wished I had been able to control the nerve that made my whole body shake. The captain paused a while as if to let me savor my terror. And what do the parents of this lucky young woman do? Well, her father has a stationery store. He has no idea of what, Monsieur Lenné? Well, you know, what I did on Rue de Lisbonne to do a friend a favor. I had no idea why he was asking me to do that. And who is this friend? Oh, I call him a friend, but I don't even know his name. A guy I just met. Never seen him before. The ruler hit the desk so violently that I jumped back. I'm in a hurry, Monsieur Lenné. I told you so already. So I will spell out the details of our contract and I'll give you 2 minutes to agree to it. If you don't, you'll regret your choice for the rest of your life, and I cannot guarantee how many days the life in question will be. He rose and moved to within inches of my face. I could feel myself melt under the dark stare. The man knew perfectly well the effect he had on me. Either you agree to help us, and you will be home in a couple of hours, or those who love you will pay dearly for your selfishness. Your family, we don't know them, but it won't take long. Your fiancée, her family, the friend with whom you live, his family, his girlfriend, if he has one, all those you work with, all of them. Believe me, Monsieur Lenné, when we start digging, we never stop, and we always find something, always. There's no exception, even if we have to bend the rules a little bit. As for you, you'll never see them again. So it's your choice. I'll give you 2 minutes, 120 seconds. He walked out and left me alone with my thoughts. Some moments burn themselves in our memories with such intensity that we live them again and again years after the whole chapters of our lives have erased themselves. How often have I relived those 2 minutes? Through a strange phenomenon, they became longer and longer as time went by, as if the captain had left me alone for hours. You can't do that, said a voice. Well, they will arrest Suzanne. You cannot become a traitor. They will find out she's Jewish, her whole family as well. What about Bertrand? You cannot sell him to the Germans. You heard the captain. They know everything already. We're all going to fall anyway. Maybe he's bluffing. Maybe they don't know anything. That's why they need you. They will torture Bertrand, your best friend, and then kill him. Are you ready to live with that? I won't let them touch Suzanne. He's your friend. You call him your brother. I won't let them touch Suzanne. Or is it my imagination? Have I let all those years write a dialogue that never existed? Did I really consider the shame, the right and the wrong, good and evil? Possibly. I'm sure I thought about Bertrand's fate. The other faceless resistance fighters, men without names, didn't matter too much, I have to be honest with myself. As to honor, treason, shame, courage, all these abstract notions, they hardly concern me. Only one thought occupied my mind during those 2 minutes. Suzanne, I had sworn that I would protect her, that she would never know the same horrible fate as her aunt. No other oath bound me, no price was too high. So, Monsieur Lenné, the officer was back. Tell me what you want from me. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Pierre. Thank you very much for sharing this with us. Any questions, please? Yes. Why is God... I just want to repeat the questions. Thank you very much for this very interesting question. Pierre, why do you think that the Lord is a she?
Well, of course it's just a joke. And if she's a she, I don't even know her color. She might be gay. I don't know. I was raised a Catholic, and frankly...
nobody's perfect.
And to be honest, my faith has been shaken year after year. So since I don't know, I just made her up.
Thank you. Yes.
The only reason I translated it and had it professionally edited by a member of the by Phyllis Burke, a member of the National Arts Club, and eventually I self-published it, was that I wanted to share. I was frustrated by the fact that my friends here in America and my wife could not share what I do, so that's why I did it. Whether I'll do it again, I'm not sure. It's a lot of money, it's a lot of work, and it demands something that I really don't like doing, namely marketing. So, anyway. But yeah, we started in France.
And thank you, Tony, for your role. Yeah, your second question?
Yes, my second question. What year was the film made?
The wooden gun?
Yeah.
Oh my God, a long time ago, 94.
94.
Yeah. Well, the good thing about this movie is that it is ageless. And actually, last night, Tony and I watched a movie which is not very good, but which is about Gisèle Halimi, who is a prominent lawyer and a former justice minister in France, when she defended a young Algerian woman, a teenager, who was accused of having planted a bomb and was subjected to torture. Something that the French never, of course the French would never commit torture, come on. But she fought, and eventually the army had, yeah, sure, of course the French committed torture, which is one of my reasons for telling the lady upstairs, you know, you didn't do a very good job.
Please.
You know what? I don't know, but usually when I've had a drink too many, which will happen soon, I compare New York and Paris to women. And to me, Paris is such a pretty woman, like yourself, Dee. It's a very pretty woman with a lot of style and elegantly dressed. But the one who makes me horny is New York.
I will not go there, but I agree.
Well, first of all, there's always the grass being greener, you know, we know that. And when the French come to New York, it's exotic, you know, and the big buildings and the, you know, how lively the city is. And when the Americans go to Paris, it's a beautiful city. I mean, I'm not challenging that, it's a beautiful city. Driving around Paris after dark, you know, along the Seine, when the buildings are, you know, it's gorgeous. It's gorgeous. Having said that, after a week in Paris, I'm bored. What can I say?
I just came back from Paris last week,
That's right.
and we had last Sunday a snow, what they call a blizzard. It was 1.5 inches of snow. The city stopped. There was not a single cab. I had to take the cab to go back to the airport. There was not a single cab. And the city was just gorgeous, like in a movie, just white. Nobody would drive. Quiet, just gorgeous. We love Paris.
My friend Kevin over there has a question.
Yeah.
God knows I love writing, but directing a movie was the most exciting experience of my life. Not the technical side of it, because let's face it, you know, my mind doesn't work like that. So I relied very much on the cameraman, on the people whose job it really was, and they never failed to remind me that it was my first movie. So that was clear. But working with the actors, that I found absolutely amazing. And especially in a story that includes a lot of emotion like this one. The sergeant who is the main character and who eventually realizes that this little retarded man has nobody in the world to protect him. That's very emotional. That's what made me cry, I guess. And just directing the actor, who, by the way, it was his. The good thing about not having, I mean, I didn't have any money, but the good thing was that because of the story, most of the actors were in their 20s. They were draftees. And therefore, many of them had one movie under their belt, not more. And the man in question, who was the central character, became a big star in France after that. Maybe not because of my movie, but he became a big star. And just as we were shooting those very emotional scenes, I tell you what, I realized, I really understood how people can have affairs in a movie, on a movie set. I really understood that. If this man, Samuel Le Bihan was his name, if he had been a woman, I am sure we would have made love. It's because come on. Because the intensity of the relationship between the director and his actor is something I experienced only once in my life, but it is so rewarding. And you become so close. And what I find really so amazing is how they move from one movie to the other. I remember when it was over, when we landed back in Paris, okay, we had a few work sessions in the dubbing studio, but I was crushed to say goodbye. It crushed me. And then they moved on to the next one. I don't know how they do that. Because for 6 weeks or 3 months, you're in love with them. There's no doubt.
I would advise Tony to be careful if he writes the next movie screen, okay? Thank you so much. Any other question? So I think we should give a big applause to Pierre DELERIVE. Thank you so much. And please order on Amazon this Te souviens-tu de moi? The Do You Remember Me, which is a wonderful book. We'll welcome you back, Pierre. Thank you so much. And we hope to see all of you the 20th of February for another wonderful topic related to what you mentioned. Alsace and Yiddish, perfect together. And then in March, on the women in Paris. And in April, on the markets in Paris. We have a lady who has written a magnificent book on the various markets in Paris. So whatever trip you plan to go to Paris, whether the flea market, the fruit market, the birds market, the no market, whatever, she will tell us. Pierre, thank you very much. And thank you, Tony,
thank you.
Because behind every wonderful man there is a wonderful lady. Tony, I was just complimenting you, so I will not repeat it. No, I will not say it again. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next month.